Hey, there's Janine. I was just getting ready to send you a text message, Janine. La 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 la. It's 11:01. Let me open my little chat box. Like most real estate professionals, people like to show up late. Where you at, Janine? You at home? What's Jack's Attack doing? Close one. There's Sylvia. How you doing, Sylvia? Good to see you. Beautiful. All right. Got a small handful of people. I know there's a couple ones that were going to show up late, but all right. Fantastic. Thanks for showing up, guys. Feel free to chime in, unmute your phone. Let me just make sure my volume's up adequately. You should be able to hear me loud and clear. It looks like everything's good to go. I've got two of my most favorite people in the world at REBA University, Janine and Sylvia. What's up, ladies?
Sloppy out there.
It's little, the roads are rough. I mean, they got lots of ruts and stuff. It's interesting. There's Cecilia. Excellent. So tell me something amazing. Let's start off with some great things. What have you been working on? Anything? Tell me something phenomenal that's happened in the last 2 weeks.
New property under contract.
Fantastic. Are you you represent the buyer or the seller?
Buyer.
Great. Tell me a little bit about this awesome property that they found.
It's just a little condo. It's a second home. Actually, this is kind of interesting. So obviously I was trying to get Mortgage Brokers of Alaska involved in the transaction. But so this is a native couple that lives out in Lovelock, and they need to buy a second home here in town because they have to come into town for medical reasons more often. So they were able to get from Alaska, USA, a 30-year mortgage, second home, 10% down, 2.75% interest.
Oh, there you go.
MBOA,
nice.
MBOA couldn't match it, so that was kind of a bummer, but that's pretty phenomenal, I thought, for a second home.
Yeah, 10% down second home program. Yeah, it's interesting when you get into some of those, you know, right now, if you have a buyer buying who owns more than one property, buying a duplex, it's hard to beat what Wells Fargo has out right now. They have a 10% conventional on a duplex, no mortgage insurance. And you only need like 3 months of reserves on your other properties. So for an owner occupied, and I just got somebody in on a duplex at, and we shopped around all kinds of lenders, MOBA, you know, guaranteed rate, Alaska USA and Wells Fargo beat the pants off them.
Wow.
You know, particularly since, you know, maybe someone who had already bought a house has already used their FHA or something. So they're only doing conventional, and most conventional loans on anything larger than a single family is 15 to 20% down. And so, yeah, you know, it's great. I'm glad that you were able to shop around and find a really good loan product. Great. Now we got a bunch of people in here. This is spectacular. All right, guys. So today I want to talk about helping you guys build your business. You know, we talk a lot about contract law and how to make sure that you write bulletproof contracts. And of course, I want to wrap up today by answering some of your questions. You guys have transaction issues, because it's important that, you know, we have a, my intention was always that the associates here at Real Estate Brokers were the best and brightest and understood the contracts better than anybody. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, though, is I want to talk about how you build your business. That ultimately you need to go out and you need to find that business and get contracts pending. And when I first, let me tell you a little story. When I first got into real estate, you know, I had come from, you know, 16 years in commercial construction, 15, 16 years, just not quite as 16. 3 engineering degrees. I was making like $120,000, $140,000 a year. I was doing really, really well in the early 2000s. And, getting into real estate, I figured that, hey, listen, I seem to get along really well with people. I think that I'm intelligent enough that everybody's going to want to do business with me. So I got into real estate and found out that nobody that I had known, of course, this is almost, the internet was just now burgeoning in 2004, 2005. So it's just, it's just now beginning to become common. This is when people still had to pay for AOL online accounts. But so, getting in pre-internet, I just figured I had a network of individuals who did business with me, and none of them did. They all associated me as a construction guy, and nobody from my friends and family knew me as the real estate professional. I just wasn't their go-to. I didn't have any mind share. So I had to go out, and even though I knew people, I'd been born and raised in the state, and I was in my early 30s or whatever it was, I had to go out and start all over again. I had to start, I suddenly discovered that people were like, nah, I know a guy, I've got friends of the family that are a real estate guy, Kevin, you're great, probably great in construction, but I got my own real estate professional. So I had to go out and really go from the dirt and dig up new clients. And one of the things I did is I went out and I created little gift baskets of like Costco muffins and beef jerky or whatever I could find that I thought people might like, right? And I would go visit businesses, and I just came from gratitude. I'd go to businesses and I'd say, hey, listen, I'm Kevin. You guys have been like, my big gold mine was an auto repair shop. There was this place, Alignment Center Professional Automotive. They worked on my rigs. They worked on my old boat. They had Professional Marine. When I had a boat, they used to work on my boat, stuff like that. And so I went to these places just with a gift basket. Go, hey, listen, you know what? You guys have always been phenomenal. You guys always did a great job. I trust you explicitly with everything I've had. And I just want to let you know, if you guys have any real estate needs, I'm now in real estate. I just, I'd love the opportunity to show you my gratitude by helping you out. And that's how I had to go out and get my business. One of the first buyers that I got, this guy named Jake, had just inherited about $200,000 from his grandma that deceased down in Homer. And he sold his estate, and he ended up with a bunch of money. And so he's like, Kevin, you want to find me an investment property? And I was like, great. I've owned rentals in the past. That's why I got into real estate. So sure, Jake, I'll help you find investment properties. Well, nobody had taught me really how to use the MLS. And I went online. He told me exactly what he was looking for. He was looking for a fourplex in East Anchorage within a specific area near Old Harbor where he lived. He lived on Old Harbor. If you know what it is, there's a bunch of single family houses on 1 acre lots over off Muldoon, right behind that Ronnie Sushi. And he was like, nah, Kev, if you could find me a couple fourplexes that are within walking distance of my house, I'll buy them as long as they're in decent condition. I'll put 25%, 30% down, buy 2, we'll be good. So I was like, oh, great. So I got in the MLS and there wasn't anything. Wasn't squat. I couldn't find any fourplexes back in 2004 or 5. And anything that had sold, the things that would hit the market went really fast, because this is back when you could still do stated loans, stated income, adjustable rate mortgages, right? So as I got in and I started looking into it, I just went and someone told, hey, you should try expired or canceled listings. That was a class they taught over at this brokerage over at KW when I just learned. And so I'm gonna teach you some of the things that they taught me. I regurgitated some of this information. But what had happened was I got in and said, okay, well, I'll just look at expired listings. Clicked on the MLS, put my search parameter and just look expireds. And I found 2 fourplexes that were adjacent. I went in, I called the seller. I want to say his name was James Lee or something like that, or Paul Lee was his name. And I said, hey, my name is Kevin Cross, and I'm a real estate licensee, and I'm curious if you're still interested in selling your 2 fourplexes. And he goes, well, as a matter of fact, Kevin, I am. I'm just retired. I'm just cashing out my retirement. I'm getting ready to move overseas to be closer to my wife's family, because I think she was a Korean wife. So they were moving back. He was going to move over to Korea or something like that, South Korea. And I said, yeah, I'd love to sell them both. So I called this expired listing out of the blue. I sold 2 fourplexes. He paid me 5% commission on each. And out of my first 60 days in the business, I got this big fat check for like $45,000, $50,000, 2 checks at over 20 grand. I was like, this is incredible. Why aren't more people in this business? But the point is, here's what's funny. When you go back and look at them, those listings had been expired for about 6 years. Because although I knew to look for expired listings, back then it didn't automatically only give you 1 year. It just said all expired listings. And so I was looking at listings when most people tell you that they're like, oh, you want fresh listing. The expired listing is an expired listing. If you have an owner that tried to sell it a couple of years ago and they weren't successful, it doesn't mean that something hasn't changed in their life now. And so to me, that was just an aha. that, listen, whether it's an expired, it's a for sale by owner or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. All we're looking for is we're looking for contact information, and then we're looking for a reason to solve their problems. We're looking for a reason to engage with these people and find out what they're going through and what we can do to help them. You know, we talked about this, you know, in Hillary's team meeting when I touched base on this, in that, you know, all we are is we're just problem solvers. And if you're scared to call people to see if they have a problem that you can help solve, then you're going to have a lot of difficulty in this business. You cannot be shy when it comes time to help somebody. The analogy I've always had, and the picture I've always had in my mind, if you think about somebody with a, you know, if you think about a tiger who's in a pit, and the tiger can be healthy and stuff like that, but it's in a pit, it's got a problem, it needs out. And it's clawing at the walls and it's doing everything it can. There's only so many ways that tiger can react. One, it can just ignore the fact that it's in a pit and just sit there and be miserable. That's an option. Another option is that you can throw it a rope or toss a ladder in there and it climbs out and it licks your face and it's like really thankful and then it runs off, right? And so it can be gratitude. Or you can throw it a rope and it can be indignant and be insulted that you tried to help it because it's a big, strong lion or a big, strong tiger and it should know better. Like, you can't control how somebody in distress acts. All you can do is just offer assistance. And in my experience, there's been 3 different kinds of leads, which I've thought were way better than anything else. One was, I always liked investors, which you guys know, that's my business. Why? Because they're not looking to buy one property every 7 years. They'll buy 7 properties in a year from a very small database. I can do a ton of business. And they also have lots of problems. Why is that a good thing? Because then they're calling me. I don't have to put them on a drip campaign to see how they're doing and send them cheesecake recipes. They're letting me know if they have tenant issues, they have maintenance issues. And so the property in and of itself creates its own marketing campaign because there's always something they need help with. So that was one reason I did investors. The 2 others were for sale by owners and expireds. And they were just bar none, particularly expireds over for sale by owners, I thought were phenomenal. So let me ask you this question. Between for sale by owners and expireds, what advantages do expired listings have over a for sale by owner for lead generating purposes? Anybody have any idea?
Well, for sale by owner, I think they're less inclined.
Kevin, you cut out a little bit. What was?
Oh, I'm sorry. My question is, what is the advantage to you when you're lead generating of an expired listing, an expired listing contact over a for sale by owner contact? Go ahead, Sylvia.
Sorry, I was going to say that they're more inclined and more willing to pay a commission.
All right, so there you go. I mean, that's one. One is that we know that they're willing to work with a real estate professional, don't we? 2, there's another really good reason. We know what price and marketing didn't work. I mean, basically someone has already tested this real estate out at a certain price, certain photos and certain things, and we know it didn't sell, okay? So 2 biggest reasons. 1, they're willing to work with a realtor, and 2, we know what price doesn't work. It's always great to be the second realtor in a situation. That's another reason expired listings are so great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share with you what my notes are and some notes I have on this. Give me just a second. We're gonna do a share screen real quick, okay? All right, you'll be able to see my big fat PowerPoint here. All right, we're gonna go back. I'll make it nice and large. Hopefully you can see that decently, and I'll just go back a slide. So we're gonna talk about you know, who the expired listings are, what are some of the limiting brain mindset that we have around these people, where do the opportunities show up, and steps for working with them, and then we'll talk about culminating and wrapping it up. So here's the most important thing for people selling, okay? So the most important reason for people selling a home, usually for sell by owner, all right, and this is, we'll touch on for sell by owners because then they go to, oops, they touch base on expireds, is we'll look at, most of them just didn't want to pay a commission, right? But if you look at it, you know, 33% of them also knew the seller, okay, with only 61 that they didn't know, right? What's amazing is the other one of all for sell by owners, 45% of them end up selling it to a relative, friend, a neighbor, or someone like that, right? But you'll see that number one thing that most people either don't work with a licensee is they want to save on commission. Okay. Now this is important to note because if, and particularly in a market where it's very much a seller's market, which we are, it becomes that much more important that you have a value proposition, because they're going to be comparing, right? They just want the biggest bang for their buck. Okay. It's not a matter of price. It's never an issue of price. It's a question of value. Price is only an issue when there's an absence of value. I want you to think about that. Okay. So first, when we're having conversations with individuals, if you're getting into a commission argument, you're probably going to lose that one. It shouldn't be a commission argument. It should be a discussion about value, right? Because if it were just strictly a commission argument and commission about how much you charge versus the other charge, they're ignoring everything that you do in order to stay in business. The analogy that I often put it to is that if you say that it's just commission, well, then your vehicle is just transportation. That's all it is. Really, essentially, it's only transportation. And if transportation in itself just needed to get you from point A to point B, and we didn't look at value, we would all be driving around in little front wheel drive little cars, right? Or, like something very, very inefficient. I mean, not necessarily air efficient, but extremely efficient, but no bells and whistles, no heated seats, right? No sunroofs, no Bose sound systems, no all these bells and whistles that go into it. Why? Because, why would you, if it's a cost issue, why would anybody ever buy an Escalade or buy a Lexus or buy a CX-9 or whatever, or an Audi? Why wouldn't we all drive little Mitsubishi cars? Okay. So it's not an issue about price. It's an issue about value. And so when we're having these conversations, one is making sure you understand what your value is. Let me revert back to the screen here. Share. Okay. Okay. Main reasons houses do not sell. Okay. Pretty easy. One, they're overpriced relative to the existing market. They're in poor condition, or they're not marketed well. Right? There's an old saying that price cures all woes. When you run into expired listings, what you typically find is that the previous licensee was not very good at explaining the market to them. Okay? Or the individual did not focus on what their goals were and why they were selling the house. Right? Maybe they were a great real estate licensee, but if you fail to tie into an individual's motivation about why they're selling, you'll never really get a price reduction out of someone if they're not motivated. But when you touch base on here's what you need to do, and you keep reminding them on why they put it on the market, then you're going to get better. You're going to get better results. It's really easy. There's overpriced relative to the existing market. They're typically it's poor condition in relative or not marketed well. Okay. You guys do have to make sure that when you're calling people, there's not a do not call list in federal and state. If you want to find out who's on do not call list, you want those, it's telemarketing. Here's the website that you can go to. It's a government website where people register. You do need to be careful, particularly when you're selling and when you're calling expired listings. Okay. So what is the opportunity? Well, there's 6 ways for sale by owners and particularly expired listings that you can get business. There's 6 different ways. Yeah. Now, what's happened is a lot of us just work with what I call tunnel vision or blinders, right? We think that the only business you can possibly get from expired listing or somebody who's trying to sell their house that you're not currently listing is to get the listing. Well, that is the first and foremost. But is there other things that you can do? Yes, you can use their listing in order to find a buyer for their house. Okay, that's an obvious thing. 3, you can help the seller buy a new home nearby. Have you guys ever thought to say, well, you know what? I wish you the best. So let me ask you, where are you going when you sell this house? Well, that's fantastic. You know what? I tell you what, how about I provide you some basic tools that you need and provide you some minimal assistance, specific assistance to help you get your house sold. You can do all the negotiating contract, do it all yourself. if you have a question or something, I won't represent you, but I can answer your questions. And in return, hey, if, would you be willing to let me help you find a great house? After all, as you're aware, since you're willing to pay the compensation for a buyer in order to buy a house, for a licensee to bring you your house, and the seller pays for it, you'll know that will be the same thing on the house that you go to buy, that seller will be paying a compensation. It won't charge you anything. Would you allow me to help you find a new home? Okay. So I think a lot of people miss this huge opportunity, which is to help the seller buy their replacement house. Even if they don't get the listing, at least you get the buyer. Okay. You could always refer to the seller to to a licensee out of state. If you find out they're moving out of state and you're like, oh, that's fantastic. And they're like, no, I'm already in a process. Hey, I got a family member who's going to buy it, and then we're moving to Virginia Beach. Well, fantastic. Do you know a fantastic licensee in Virginia Beach? Do you mind if I refer you them or find you a great person, right? So then you can get 30% of doing nothing just by referring this for sale by owner or this expired listing to an agent out of town. Okay. You can meet potential customers by offering to host open houses. Did you know that you could host an open house for a for sale by owner? Right? Why would you offer to do that? Hold on, let me look for my little chat box. Look for my chat box tool. Forgive me, screen sharing. Oh, here it is. More chat. All right, you guys can either chime in or you can, I'm trying to move this around. You can either chime in or you can just turn off your mic and ask. But did you guys have any idea that you could send this to my emails? Can you send this to me or my emails from Becky McVeigh? Sure. All right. Did you have any idea that you could host an open house for somebody who's selling their house FSBA? Or somebody who's expired and they haven't decided? We're going to talk about some fantastic expired listing scripts here shortly, but yeah, you absolutely can. Let's say you're working on the seller who's got a for sale by owner listing and you're chiseling away at him. You're like, hey, you know what? And it's in a phenomenal location. It's Turnagain View. It's Bayshore. It's somewhere where open houses go really well. And maybe they're going to have something. So you know what I've often found, Mr. Seller, is that a lot of times buyers, when they go through a house, they want to be able to talk amongst themselves without offending anybody. And oftentimes what you will hear is they'll tell you they're really interested. They tell you they love the property, but that's just because they don't want to say anything negative to your face. They want to be respectful. That's the way we're taught. But then you don't ever hear back from them. They're not going to get around you. So I tell you what, would you be offended if I helped follow up with these individuals, make sure they got into a good lender, and there's anything that I could do to help you make sure that you secure this? And by the way, how would you like to free up your weekend? I'd be more than happy to sit an open house at your Obviously, if I bring the buyer, I would represent the buyer, but then that would give you an opportunity to sell your house, get it on the market, get it exposed, and then also get your weekend back. Do you think that sounds reasonable? So there's different things that you can do in order to do an open house. And also help the seller write up business if the seller finds a buyer for a negotiating commission. Do a flat fee. I do that all the time. I tell them, you know what, congratulations. By the way, if you ever need a real estate professional in order to help you negotiate the contract, I'll charge you $1,500 just to do the paperwork. That's a fraction. I'll do a flat fee, help you do that. I'm not going to represent you. I'll make sure you have all the forms and all the documents and everything's together just to make sure that we can help you put the deal together. Okay. There's 6 ways that you can get other business or earn income from one lead. Okay. Has anybody implemented, other than obviously just getting the listing, is anybody in our group implemented any of these other strategies and been successful? Is this an aha for anybody for the first time? And are you realizing that there were some lost opportunities?
Hey, Kevin, it's Val. I just had a quick question. When you offer to do an open house for at FSBO, do you have to have them sign any particular form or document?
I just sign an AREC. And then, you don't have to sign a listing agreement because you're not listing the house. You're just basically doing an open house on a listing, and you would just want to make sure that on your stuff that I don't represent the seller. The seller is selling their house for sale by owner, and I'm opening it up to the public because I think it's a phenomenal opportunity, and I'd love for people to come see it. So That's an excellent question. Do you need to have any kind of agreement? You might write up a small agreement on a Word document if you felt like this individual wasn't going to honor their end of it. But I think most sellers, I mean, if they're willing to let you do an open house, they realize that if you find the buyer, you'll be representing the buyer's commission. That you would be getting the compensation they'd be offering from a buyer. Just have a fierce conversation. But other than an AREC saying that you do not represent the seller and you're just providing specific assistance, I don't think there's any other document. Any other questions? I've done the contract between buyer and seller. All right, so Samantha has done those. That's fantastic. Okay, so as we see, there's a bunch of different, the thing is that, again, when you don't focus on selling real estate, okay, that's just a byproduct of what we do. When you focus on what problems of theirs can I solve, okay, what opportunities do solving those problems create, then you look at all kinds, because I've done just about every one of these. I've done open houses when I was new at listings that weren't mine or were for sale by owner. Written up contracts. I've referred them to people out of state. I've gotten the listing a bunch of times, but just about all of these work. It's just important that when you meet with the individual, you stay in this I'm here to solve your problem mindset, and that's when you find more opportunities, okay? So where do the opportunities? So there's a couple different things, okay? There's two different approaches that you could approach individuals. One is just be straightforward and ask for the business and just say, that's what I call no BS, okay? And what I mean by no BS is just, you do understand that I'm here and I'm asking for the business. And we talked about this in the last FSBO one. This is really critical, okay? Never claim that you have a buyer for a property if you don't have a buyer, okay? That's BS. And how can you have a relationship of trust if you've gotten that relationship not being honest with your intentions? Just say, hey, listen, I don't currently have a buyer for your house, but that's because I haven't seen it and haven't been in it, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller. The truth is, if it's a really great property and I see the value and it makes sense, then yes, I mean, then I know what buyers and I know what to go out and what to look for in order to find a buyer for your house. But until I've seen it and until I know what we're dealing with, the truth is nobody may have a buyer for your house if it's not in a condition and a price that will sell. So when do you have 45 minutes so I can come take a look at your house? Because my intention is to help you sell this house. Either you will list with me or I will find a phenomenal buyer for it. But really my intention is, if it's a really great house, I would love to help you sell it. Okay, so the one, just be completely straightforward, ask for the business. The other one is an indirect approach, which is let the seller self-discover the need for your services, okay? Now that takes a little bit more kid gloves, and that comes with asking questions that help them reveal the pain involved in any situation, okay? I would say that the indirect approach is more like, well, that's fantastic. So you typically call on a Monday after they've done open houses and you say, how was your weekend? Right? Yeah, it was beautiful. It looked like it would have been a great day to go snow machining, skiing, spend time with your family, whatever it looks like. You spent all weekend in an open house. How was that for you? Oh, it was painful. We were here all three. We were here for 6 hours. We had 2 people. They'll usually tell you it was much better than it actually was, because they don't want to admit that it was a horrible failure. They just say, well, great. I'm just kind of curious, how much longer do you intend to, give up your weekends doing open houses before you hire a professional and do the job? I'm just wondering how much you think your time is worth. Right? So that's just letting the seller self-discover the need for services by asking questions that reveal the pain of their particular situation. So 2 different approaches. None of them are wrong. You just got to realize that they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Depends on you as an individual and your communication skills. Okay. Next is the opportunity. Commercial, what can I do to help? Hold on just 1 second. Indirect, let me see what self-direction. Okay, next one. Next one is understand your mindset, okay? And this, again, just going back, is whenever we're dealing with anybody that's an expired listing or for sale by owner, it's so important that we come from contribution. What can I do to help you today? Here's the expertise and here's my experience. And then here are other things I can do to help you, okay? I want you to imagine particularly the mindset of an expired listing. Okay, let's think about that. Their house has been on the market for 180 days, 200 days, and didn't sell when they see everybody's houses sell around them. How do you think they feel? If you were to put yourself in the shoes of somebody whose home isn't selling, how do you think they feel?
Discouraged, upset.
Yeah, I mean, do you think people generally love their homes and take pride in it, or at least, you know, want to think that the world that the house that they live in and the place that they reside in, you know, that people would like it? Don't you think they feel a little rejected? A little hurt? A little embarrassed? Okay, so, you know, that's why it's so important that you come to them and say, how can I help you? Because sometimes some of their anger is just frustration. It's, you know, if you think about it, they put their house out on the market almost like a, you know, their house was looking for someone to marry it, and their house went out on the dating scene and got brutally rejected. They couldn't get anybody to swipe right. Just getting rejected. And here they are, and they're like 6 months later, and you know, they're thinking of all their dreams they had to put on hold and all these things that they wanted to do, you know, and there's probably a lot of you know, passion and energy when they first listed it. Like they're thinking, oh, these things are going to happen, and then they didn't, and they don't. And they got to rethink like what their plans are in life. It's a big decision to move. Right. And so now all these things are on hold and it's not happening. And so it's so important that we come to them and just say, hey, listen, I understand it's got to be frustrating, you know? So listen, why did you list your house to begin with? Right? What was the feedback that you got? First thing that you do when you engage with these individuals, when you get an expired listing and you get someone on it, first thing that you got to do is you got to just come from contribution. You got to come from compassion and go, you know, it does help if you call relatively soon after they've listed, after they've expired. Okay. But it doesn't mean that you can't call somebody that expired a year ago. Okay. Those things don't change. Okay. So let's readdress it and going back to expired listings. And we're calling these individuals who are coming from contribution. Why would you want to call immediately after the listing expires, or at least within the first couple of days, as opposed to maybe a month or 2 months later? What do you think the advantage is of calling relatively soon? I'll tell you the number one is most sellers don't even know their listing expired. Most real estate professionals haven't told them that their listing's getting ready to expire and haven't notified them that, hey, listen, our contract's about to come to an end. Once your contract comes to an end, your phone is going to blow up, because then, you know, you're basically back on the market. I mean, you'll be taken off the market, and then everybody and their mom can call you. So how would you like me, you know, that's an important conversation to have with your seller. How would you like me to address this? If you ignore it and then that house pops up expired, and in someone, you know, a young and aggressive like old Kevin here, who was hungry when I first got in real estate, picks up the phone and calls him, that's bad for you. Because I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Seller, this is Kevin Cross over at Real Estate Brokers of Alaska. How are you today? Hey, I really apologize for bothering this morning, but I just wanted to know, are you aware that your house is no longer on the market for all the buyers to see, that you've expired and you are no longer on contract? Most sellers, I will tell you, 8 out of 10 had no idea. If I get hold of them in the first 24 hours, like, no, I didn't even know. So yeah, you know what? I find that is a common answer with a lot of people whose houses don't sell, that they didn't know because their licensee hasn't been communicating to them and let them know that their house is no longer on the market. But that is in fact what's happening. So let me ask you, now that you know that your house is no longer on the market and you're free to interview other real estate licensees, when do you have 45 minutes to show you what I can do differently to help you get your house sold? Now they may be like, well, I want to talk to my other licensee. And go, oh, that's great. So when an individual's license expires, there's only a handful of options that they have, isn't there? Only a small handful. I want you to think about that. You'd think that the whole world, nah, there isn't. There's like only 4 or 5 things that they can do if it expires. So let's talk about the first one. If it expires, what's one thing that they can do? You guys name them off. Okay. You discover there's only like 4 or 5. What's the first thing that they could do?
Extend.
Boom, extend. And if they choose to, okay, extend. And we're going to talk about how we handle and how we handle each of these objections. Okay. One is they could extend. Very good, Sylvia. What's another option?
Take it off the market.
There you go. They could take it off the market. They could just withdraw it. Take off market. Do they have any other options?
List it with somebody else.
Yeah, they could list with someone else. What's another option? They could rent it. Couldn't they rent it? And then there's one more. They could list it for sell by owner. They could decide they're not using a listing licensee. Those are 5 options. And really beyond that, there's not a whole lot. They're either going to extend it. They're either going to take it off the market. They're either going to list it with someone else. They're going to rent it, or they're going to do for sale by owner. Guys, there's only 5 objections that an expired listing would have. And once you have answers and you have resolutions to each of those 5, that's all you need. You don't need to know all the scripts and dialogues and every answer. You just need to know that there's only 5 objections to an expired listing, not listing with you or giving you the appointment. And as long as you understand how to handle all 5 of those, the business is yours. So let's talk about the first one. They plan to extend with their first licensee. Well, the mindset behind that is, you know what, seller, I completely understand. But let me ask you this. What are they going to do differently this time that they didn't do the first time in order to get your house sold? You know, Einstein said the definition of insanity was doing the same thing and expecting a different result. When do you have 45 minutes to an hour that I can show you what I do differently to help individuals like you get your house sold? What's the worst thing that could happen? Because you seem to me like an individual who likes to make educated decisions. Am I correct? Excellent. When do you have 45 minutes to an hour that can educate you on what I do to help individuals in your shoes get your house sold? Right? If think about it, what is it? That's a real question, isn't it? What are they going to do differently? Right? Are they going to do anything differently, or are they just going to be coming back to you again for more price reductions? Okay. So that's my typical response, is that they're going to extend that contract. Okay. Again, what are they going to do differently? And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Based on that, when do you have 45 minutes to an hour that I can show you what I do to help individuals like you get their house sold? Okay. So the second one, they could take it off the market. Right? So, and if they choose to take it off the market, my suggestion and the way I always handle that was be like, I completely understand that, but let me ask you, if I were to bring you an offer in the next 15 days that was at a price that a price that got you where you needed to be and achieved your goals so that you could be where you needed to be in 45 days, would you at least consider it? If I had you an offer in the next 15 days that was the price and terms acceptable to you and got you where you wanted to be, would you be willing to consider it? And of course they'd say yes. They always say yes. And you go, fantastic. So at least there's some motivation to sell your house. Am I correct? Excellent. You know, what I typically find is that, once we meet for 45 minutes to an hour and I explain to you what I do differently to get your house sold, we may find that you're much closer to obtaining those goals and reaching or being where you need to be than you realized. What's the worst thing that can happen by spending 45 minutes to an hour with me? Is that my guess is that now you learn a new perspective and different ways that are used in order to get houses sold that you will probably discover your last licensee just didn't use. Right? So it's coming from contribution. If they're looking to take it off the market, again, hey, if I were to bring you an offer in the next 15 days, would you at least consider it? So there's some motivation, and go back to, when do you have time to learn what I do differently to help people get their houses sold? Okay. They say they're going to list with someone else. Right? And that one's always great because I go, oh, that's fantastic. I love that you're interviewing other people. In fact, You probably should have interviewed as many people as you could have before you listed the first time, because then we wouldn't be in this awkward situation where 6 months have passed and your house hasn't sold. That's got to be painful. Am I right? So I'm glad that you've already, but have you signed any paperwork? No, you haven't signed anything? Well, excellent. Well, I tell you what, when do we, again, have 45 minutes to an hour, I can show you what I do differently. After all, what's the worst that can happen? That you learn new strategies and techniques, okay? And oftentimes, depending on how the conversation is going, if they're giving me resistance, if they're being like a little abrasive, I will often say to them something along the lines of, listen, you know what, Mr. Seller, I can understand, you know, you just need to understand my perspective. I just want to be one of two people. I want to be the individual who's either helping you get your house sold and the one that's helping you realize your dreams and getting you where you want to be. I'd love to be that person. Or I want to be the person you turn to when the road you're on no longer is working out. Is that fair? And absolutely it's fair. Because isn't that, well, that's the truth of the statement. I either want to be the one listing their house or the one that they turn to when that relationship doesn't work. If that individual doesn't pick up their phone, if they haven't been getting weekly updates, if 3 weeks go by and they don't know where they're at, they're getting frustrated and they're starting to rethink that professional relationship, then I want to be the individual that when they sever that I want to be their backup. Okay. So they're going to relist with someone else. If they want to rent it, okay, then that goes back to, you can use the same script with take it off the market, which is, hey, listen, if I were to bring you an offer in the next 15 days, would you still be interested in selling that property? Additionally, for renting that property, that's excellent. Have you dealt with tenants before? Right? Are you at all concerned with the condition of a property that a tenant would leave it in? And then what you would have to do in order to repair it, and whether or not that's the best decision for you. Do you think you're going to need a property manager in order to manage it? Right? And so, you know, you will typically find people will only rent it because they feel like they don't have any other options, particularly if it's a single family house. Now, it's different if it's investment property and things like that, but typically single family houses, the rent it is just an act of desperation. And if you can go back on, hey, listen, if I can get you an offer within the next 15 to 20 days, right, that gets you where you want to be on terms that was acceptable to you, would you at least be interested in hearing what I do differently in order to help people sell their houses? Right? In order to get to appointment. And then finally, they're going to list it for sell by owner. I usually do the for sell by owner one, which is a combination of some of the other scripts, which is, you know what, I completely get it. Listen, if I were you, I would be selling for sell by owner before I hired before you hire another weak licensee who can't get the house sold in 6 months. But I tell you what, before you do, why don't we meet and I tell you what I do differently in the next, I spend 45 minutes to an hour and you can see the techniques that I use. If you're going to sell your house for sell by owner, what's the worst thing that can happen? That you learn some techniques and you learn some things that will help you get your house sold. Okay. And that's really literally that's the worst thing that can happen, is that you learn something new that's going to help you achieve your goals. When do you have that time? So again, we're just going back, we're identifying those. We're identifying those pressure points and what is the bad side. Now, are there any other objections? Are there any other objections that someone's selling their house that we haven't covered other than those 5?
The economy.
Oh, excellent. So they might say, okay, which their concern is the economy, but their answer to the economy is what? To not sell it or to do what? So
Not sell it, yeah.
So Valerie, my question is, if the economy is, you know what, I really appreciate you bringing that to my attention. What is it about the economy that concerns you?
They usually say just either, you know, especially recently, like election or our state budget and just current events, I guess, as people worry.
All right. You know, so Valerie, do I have permission that we go back and you pretend like you're a seller and I'm the licensee and they have concerns about the economy?
Yes.
Excellent. So again, we'll just go back. Hey, Valerie, I understand that you have concerns about the economy in selling your house. May I ask, what is your concern?
Joe Biden getting rid of all the oil worker jobs.
Yeah, that would be a concern. So what do you think your options are in the regards to sell your house if you think that that is a reality that we may be facing.
That maybe people just can't afford my house anymore?
Well, here's the latest market stats. Right now, we're looking at 30% less inventory right now than we've seen in recent years. In the last 5 years, the average houses on the market during this time, we are 30% low. By the way, that's a real stat, guys. If you don't know your stats, we're 30% low on inventory, right? We also know that we're historically low interest rates, and our average days on market is just over 22 days. We have a phenomenal housing market right now. So Val, let me ask you this. If you have a concern about what the market is doing, and we know right now this market is performing phenomenally well, do you think it's best for you to get your house on the market as soon as possible and list it to sell? Or do you think it's in your best interest to just wait and gamble it out to see what the future holds?
I guess it makes sense to at least try to list it and see what happens.
I would agree, Val. And so let me ask you, if we put your house on the market for say 35, 45 days, just to test the market, to see if we can hit the price that you need to give you what we want, and we get the house sold, does that create a problem for you?
No, not at all.
Okay. And if after 45 days your house doesn't sell, and at least we know what we need to do from the feedback from our showings and from other licensees, we know what we need to do in order to get it sold maybe next spring, would that present a problem for you, even if we just tested the market for 30 or 45 days?
No, not at all.
All right, fantastic. So Valerie, what I suggest that we do is we get your house on the market as quickly as possible. We get it staged, we get it priced right, and we get some photographs. And I'll tell you what, I'll sign a 60-day listing agreement with me, and then you can cancel after 30 days. You can cancel. If you want to cancel before 30 days, you got to pay me back for my photos, but we can use those photos in the future. But, I think in today's market, with aggressive it is as low of inventory and interest rates as low, I think you'd be really surprised at what we can make happen for you. And the worst thing that happens, if we don't get a buyer in 45 days, we'll pull it off the market, and then we can take a look at what we need to regroup so you can prepare for so we can prepare for the future. Does that sound like a fair plan?
Yeah.
Guys, let me ask you something. If you had a great price listing, or at least a house that was really clean and ready to go in this market, is 45 days enough time to sell it?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Are you kidding me? We're seeing multiple offers. Guys, you don't need 6-month contracts. If you still have a listing after 5.5 months, guys, you didn't do your homework up front. We all know that good residential houses under $600,000, as long as they're clean, nice, and they're reasonable, right? It's probably gonna get an offer really quick, or at least you're really, really close to it, unless you just completely blow the price out of the market. But that is a really good way of getting the listing, because once they're in and on the market, I've done this 30-day only listing before, and they ended up listing with me for 90 days. And it's like, hey, listen, the 30 days are up. They're like, well, that went by really quick. I know, but we've got this feedback. We just had 5 more. We got this. Hey, listen, would you be offended if we just extend this out another 30 days? It looks like everything's going really well. And they'll be like, oh, no, this ain't so bad. So, and I don't know how you guys run your business, but even if I had a 6-month listing contract, if you wanted to cancel on me after 45, 50 days, because I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, whatever. I normally just write in the bottom of that first page, just got to pay me back for my photos, right? Other than that, I don't have a whole lot of expenses. A lockbox, a sign. All right, whatever. I spend more on a dinner at sushi than I do on getting a lockbox and a sign, right? So I just consider those negligible costs. But if I can get a listing even for 30 days, believe me, if I price it right and I get photos, oh, I know I'm going to have that property in contract in less than 30, right? Even if it's in this market, gosh, it's just ridiculous. So now, Val, did we answer your questions regarding how you deal with someone? What else about the economy might you run into? Yes, people are concerned about oil jobs and things like that. And I just tell them, I say, you know what? The truth is nobody has a crystal ball. In fact, if you were to go back exactly a year ago today, and we went back to last November, just before Thanksgiving, and we weren't even talking about COVID, would you have any idea that this many, that in 1 year, this many restaurants and this many businesses would be closing down? No, you have no idea. Now, is it possible on the opposite side of this that something happens and we see a bunch of business and stuff then start back up and we see a flood of money? Yes, absolutely. Because right now the future is completely uncertain. That is why it's so important for you to make decisions not based on the imagination and the hypotheticals of people who really don't know, because they don't. You have to make a decision on what's your best interest in the market that we know today. And today we have a massive shortage of inventory, record low interest rates, and the buyers are out there buying aggressively. For 99.9% list a sales price on average, and as little as 21 days to 22 days on market. You couldn't have asked for a more perfect storm to sell your house. And if you're serious about it, I would encourage you to take action now. And if we put it on the market for 30, 45 days and you don't get any response, there's nothing that says you can't pull it off and relist it next spring. At least we tried. And how bad and how, and if I could get you the price you need the price and terms that you need in order to get your goals to be in Arizona or whatever it is that such a bad thing? Right? So, excellent. Were there any other objections, any other things that you guys would want to exercise and handle? Has anybody had a listing appointment recently and had other than economic issues or because election had someone throw an objection that you struggled with?
I have one coming up, a duplex, and the seller, it's probably not going to happen till January, but I'm worried that he's going to want too much for it.
All right. So again, when someone, that's very common, particularly with investors. Guys, investors are the biggest nightmare when it comes to pricing properties. Why do you think that is?
Well, they always think their house is better than anybody else's. And
Well,
that's exactly what he thinks.
All right.
They
so
also don't have to sell it.
Yeah,
So-
because they're not motivated sellers. They're not motivated sellers, guys. It's not like they're selling in order. So what you have to be able to speak to is if an individual is selling a non-owner occupied property, you have to get them to take their eyes off that property and focus on the opportunity that they're missing. Okay? This is a critical conversation because they are investors, which means they're business owners. It's called opportunity cost. Has anybody heard the term opportunity cost? Yes. What are opportunity costs? Well, those are fees or expenses that you have to pay in order to take advantage of greater benefit on the other side. You would say a higher tax bracket is an opportunity cost. Paying a lot of money to the IRS is kind of like an opportunity cost because it means you made a lot of money. Not always, because there's different ways that you can shelter it. You need to have really good CPAs and attorneys, right? However, typically speaking, people who make more money gradually pay more money, less as a percentage, but more money. So we call that opportunity cost. When it comes to investment properties, Sylvia, the question you have for them is, why are you selling the duplex? I mean, honestly, if it's making you good money and you're not willing to price it, you're probably just, you're the highest bidder on your own property, which you're going to be. So why are we even going through the exercise of listing the property? Sylvia, why are we selling the duplex?
Why is he want to sell his duplex?
Yes.
You're right. He's not super motivated. He wants to do something different within real estate, maybe pay down his sixplex, maybe buy smaller investment properties.
All right. So if you don't know why and he doesn't know what he wants to do, then
Yeah.
it probably isn't going to sell. The conversation you have him is, listen, I want to help you, but I can only solve the problem if I know what the problem is. If you go to a doctor and the doctor says, what are you here for? And you go, well, I might have some shoulder pain. I might have some knee pain. I'm really not sure. My stomach hurts every once in a while, but I'm just like, but I need a doctor. You're gonna be like, well, what are we addressing here? Like, what problem are I even trying to solve? Okay. That's the guy who's just going to sit in the waiting room and bitch. Right? That's the guy who doesn't know where he's going is the one who sits in traffic and complains, even though they could have taken a right at the next intersection and gone around all of it to get wherever they needed to be. But he doesn't know where he wants to go. So no road is the right one. They just sit in traffic and bitch. So you really need to get serious about why are we selling this? And that's the conversation. Go, listen, in order for me to help you reach your goals, we need to be very specific about what those goals are. Why are we selling this property? If I got an offer on it right now, even at the price that you want, we need to be very definitive on what we're going to take that money and do so we can see what is the benefit of selling it. Because if you don't know why you're selling it, the worst thing can happen to you is we get into contract. The buyer gets a home inspection, gets an appraisal, and we're 2 weeks before closing. And then you're like, you know what? I decided I don't want to sell it. In which case you're in breach of specific performance and they can sue you for 3 times damages plus expenses and attorney fees. You do not want that. You better be making sure that if you're going to sell something, you're committed to selling it. Why are we selling? Right? You need to grab him by the scuff of the neck, say, quit beating around the bush. And then if he says, well, I want to buy another property, great. So what is the equity that you have in the property? If you would apply that towards, let's say he wants to pay off his other property, great. One, that's not a 1031 exchange. So he's going to he's going to sell this property. He's going to make $100,000. He's going to have to pay taxes on the $100,000 because it's not a tax deferred exchange. He's going to have to pay 15 to 20% plus recaptured depreciation, right? So you're going to walk away with 80. You make 100, you're going to walk away with 80, and you can take 80,000 and reduce 80,000 in debt. What does that do for you? What does 80,000 in debt reduction do for your performance, and what kind of rate of return are you going to get on it? Plus, you don't have the issues with the duplex. Is that worth selling this property over? You just need to have very specific conversations about what is the problem that we're solving. Because I can tell you, Sylvia, the reason he's overpriced is because he doesn't know. So the only thing he can do is because he doesn't know what he wants to do in his mind, if it's a big enough number, then he can do multiple things. But that's not the reality of the situation. So I think what needs to happen in this particular case, Sylvia, is you just need to have a very serious conversation with him about, you need to be realistic. Now, I'm great at selling real estate, but I'm bad at, dealing with imaginary situations. And so we need to be very specific on why you want to sell this property and what selling this property, what problems are those going to solve. Because my job is I'm a problem solver. And right now you don't know what the problem is, and I can't solve that. And what you'll find is that an individual who's an investor, by the way, they will love that. They will love that someone finally lined them out and smacked them around a little bit and said, oh, you know what? Here's what you need to do. And this is why you need to do it. Because most investors and people who own businesses, okay, they have on your DISC profile, you know what? That's a great one. We're going to go into personality profiles at probably the next meeting. How many people would like to know about how to communicate with different personality profiles? Yeah. An individual who's typically a driver, right? I have that vector. I'm an ID. So I'm an extrovert, but I'm also got real high drive. That's where I get these angry 11s. People with a really high driven mentality, they often are independent business owners. They're often male business owners, but they're not always. It's just, typically there's a tendency to gravitate towards something. What do you think their biggest fear is? Why do you think they're so aggressive? What is their fear?
Failure.
No, it's not failure. Because they'll just go up and pick it up. They're the first guy who goes, well, screw this. We'll just do it again. I'll rebuild it. Right? It's time. The reason they're so aggressive, the reason they're so abrasive, the reason they cut you off in the middle of the sentence isn't because they think that they're being rude. It's the minute their brain says, I got it, and I know the answer, they're already moved on, and they'll cut you off, and they'll change subjects, and you'll be like, I was in the middle. No. That's because those guys are typically are big on don't waste my time. So when you meet somebody who's a big driver, he owns properties, and he doesn't know, he's like, well, I think I want to do this. He may not be a high D because he doesn't know what he would want to do to solve the problem. Most Ds know exactly what they want to do. In fact, to a fault where they think they're right, even when they're wrong. Okay. But it may be he just needs someone to say, here's what you need to do. Listen, the worst thing can happen to you, Mr. Seller, is that you put it on the market, it sits there for 6 months, it doesn't sell, and you lost opportunity elsewhere. If we know exactly what we're going to take the money out of this property, what problem we're going to accomplish, then we may be having to look at an opportunity cost. And the opportunity cost is you price it less than you think it's worth, but at least it sells, and it sells quickly. So you get the money necessary in order to take advantage of a better opportunity, and you will more than make up for it in the first 5 to 6 months of ownership on the new investment. Don't forsake dollars because you're not willing to sacrifice some nickels. And that's what's going to happen when you overprice this property. So you might just have to be really direct. Okay, let's see what we've got here. So it is 12 o'clock. It's high noon. We normally wrap up here. So expired listings for sell by owners are great. Remember, focus on contribution. Also, there are only 5 objections. There's only 5 things that a person who has an expired listing or a for sale by owner, why they don't list with you, okay? There's only 5, or excuse me, particularly with an expired listing, there's only 5. They either tend to extend, they're either gonna take it off the market, they're gonna list it with someone else, they're gonna rent it or do for sale by owner. Okay, that's the only 5 objections that there are. And all the solutions, once you write those down and you narrate out a script or dialogue on how to resolve those and use your own words that solves that problem, guys, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get almost every appointment. I will tell you that expired listings and for sale by owners for me were some of the easiest business I could get because they were basically people out there just going, I have a house I want to sell and I need help. I just don't know it yet. They're just waving their hands. And in this market, I will tell you, listings are gold. Listings are gold. How many people are working with a buyer that you've written more than 2 or 3 contracts for and missed out on a house? Right? And am I the only one who's writing 2 and 3 contracts for buyers only to have them get beat out of multiple offers? It's exhausting. I would much rather have people fighting over my business. Go get listings. All right. Any other questions, concerns before we wrap up for today? Just the sound of silence. All right. Well, this should be recorded. If you guys want to go back and listen to the recording, it'll be posted on the REBA Universe. If you guys make sure that you're on the REBA Lounge page, okay. You can go back and listen to those scripts. Is that you, Becky? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I had to pause for a bit. I started out and then I had to pause because I'm in a multiple offer situation today. And I hope the best, but I just sold a property because I had listings. So it does make a difference. I'm looking forward to this personality thing because it's rich. Yeah, we need all.
No, it's one that I forgot about. I totally took advantage, and I appreciate that, Becky. So next week, we're going to teach all about personality profiles, okay? And how to recognize a different individual's personality profile. Because Becky, we all know that you're a very high I. That's what I love about you. You and I are the same. We both have high eyes. We love people. We love making people happy, right? We just love putting a smile on people's face. We get our energy from being around other people, don't we?
I'll work 24 hours a day for people. And
So,
even with, even with a messed up knee.
I'll give you a little something that I learned about myself by studying personality profiles, Becky, and you probably experienced the same thing, is that people who have high eyes have a tendency to overpromise. And this is something I have to rein in. And it's not because we think we can do everything. It's because people who are high eyes and love other people and want and get their energy from seeing other people be happy, they really think they're the kind of people who say, I can be somewhere in 15 minutes. Although we know like traffic never moves that slow. We're just really optimistic. And so when we hear somebody's in need, we're often like, oh, I can help you. I can do that. I would love to do that because we get joy out of helping other people. The problem is we have trouble turning people away. And the next thing you know, we don't sleep. And we're like, then we frazzle. We create this world where we feel like we're letting a bunch of people down because we overpromised. And we just want everybody to be happy. And so, you know, it's really important in order to find happiness in life, that a high I, that they also learn how to time block and be realistic and have to tell people, you know what, I love you, but gosh, I just don't have the time. That's like that's like the hardest words you can say to someone is, I don't have time to help you. I wish I could. It hurts. It's like, well, literally
Kevin,
painful.
Maybe I can help you. I think we can both help each other. And that's why we're better together, because that's what I told my client, Karen Adams, just now. I've known her since 1997. We're writing in this killer offer, and may the best one win. And we have a super great escalation clause, and we're going to do everything under power. But you know what? You're absolutely right. Time blocking is very vital. That's why I have Valerie Ritz. And
Oh.
I have Trevor that did my open house because I have to delegate. And we're even better together. Everyone wins when we pair
Excellent.
up. That's why I love being on this team. That our team is flipping amazing. I see this gorgeous Samantha and Leslie and Valerie was on there, but now she's off. And Stephanie, I need to learn how to get my picture on there because I don't know. And y'all better be sharing with me because
No,
you
we'll
look
be working on
gorgeous,
profile.
you three little beauties. And then there's Kevin with his bald head. But I love you,
That's
Kevin.
a beautiful bald head, though.
You do. You rock it. Not very many
Everybody
people
can
can
pull that
rock
off.
that
I
bald
will tell
head.
you. Well, I'm going to wrap up out of interest of time, but in the a
you,
little bit
Kevin.
of bald. My brother shaved his head, and his head does not look good bald. He quickly
No.
grew hair.
You rock it. Not everybody can pull it off. And then
All right, guys.
Samantha looks
I'm gonna
so
let you
great.
go.
A little
So
pink
next week
white
we're-
pregnant girl. She's
Yep.
beautiful. So
All right. So next week we're gonna do personality profiles, disc profiles, and
Sweet.
I'm gonna share mine with you, and I'll show you where you can go to do free personality assessments, and you'll find it extremely informative. All right, guys. You have a great week.
we
and I
did, we
appreciate
did
you
that
coming
at
in.
Jack White. It's color code. I'll share it with you. It's amazing. And it takes like 10 minutes max.
Thanks,
And
Becky.
guess what my family is? We're all different colors.
Yep.
Crazy
Thanks,
people.
Becky.